Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. So I am Diane Yentel, President and CEO of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. For those of you who don't know us well, we are a membership organization dedicated to achieving socially just public policy that assures that the lowest income people have decent, safe, and affordable homes. And we do our work with members, partners, and allies across the country. Housing California is a longtime partner of the coalitions. They do tremendous and tireless work at the local, state, and federal levels to advance housing solutions. And I'm grateful for their good work, for their partnership, and for the opportunity to be here with you today. So there's no doubt that the work of the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, the work of Housing California, and all of you has never been more important. Our cause has never been more urgent. And the problems before us are daunting. We face skyrocketing rents, and for the lowest income people, stagnant wages. We have historic levels of renters paying more than half of their income each month for their homes. We have increased concentrations of poverty and rising levels of inequality, of wealth, income, and access to opportunity. Communities from Ferguson to Flint to Milwaukee highlight the decades of federal, state, and local housing policies that created and sustained communities of deep poverty, geographically cut off from opportunity. And research continues to build, showing us just how harmful it can be for people, especially for kids, to live in neighborhoods of such deep poverty. Raj Chetty's groundbreaking research from a couple years ago proved that where we live, from the state to the city to the block, even the street, can have profound impacts on the opportunities we get in life. In fact, he found that of all the determinants that impact our ability to kind of climb up the economic ladder, none are more important than home, place, the communities in which we are born. And every year matters. Every year that a child spends in a deeply poor, distressed community can cement lifelong negative impacts. Everything from educational attainment to lifetime earnings to life expectancy. Today, there's over 12 million households living in neighborhoods of deep poverty, and the numbers are rising, nearly doubling since the year 2000. The number of communities to be considered ones of deep poverty have increased by 75% over that same period of time. And the impacts are felt most profoundly within communities of color. So 1 in every 4 poor Black families and 1 in every 7 poor Latino families live in neighborhoods of deep poverty. That's compared with 1 in every 13 poor white families. So the research makes clear that what we as housers have long known, right? If we want to create and expand opportunity for people, we have to start with home. And they have to be decent, safe, accessible, and affordable homes. But rents are skyrocketing and wages are not keeping up. Today, there's over 11 million households paying half of their income every month for a home, and hundreds of thousands more with no homes at all. At the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, each year, we determine what we call the housing wage. That's how much you have to earn an hour just to be able to rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment. And in 2016, nationally, the housing wage is $20.40. In California, it's nearly $30 an hour. So these rents, clearly, they're not just out of reach for the lowest income minimum wage renters, but the average renter earns about $15 an hour. And for them, California rents are nearly twice that. We also put out a report each year, just last week, put out the 2017 report that quantifies the shortage of homes affordable and available to the lowest income people. There's a shortage of 7.4 million homes needed to be affordable and available for the lowest income people. For every 100 extremely low income families, there are just 35 homes affordable and available to them nationally. In California, there are just 21 homes for every 100 of those deeply poor households. The shortage in California is 1.1 million units. It's about 415,000 shortage in LA, shortage of 73,000 units in Sacramento, a shortage of about 130,000 units in San Francisco. So the results of this shortage is severely cost-burdened renters. Over 8 million of the poorest families paying one paycheck each month towards their rent. And many are paying much more than that, 60, 70, 80% of their income each month to have a home. So despite the obvious need, affordable housing in this country is a rarity. 3 out of 4 households in need of and eligible for assistance get none at all. They wait in line to be added to years-long waiting lists, hoping to win what is essentially a housing lottery. Only the lucky 25% get the help that they need. This is why we have homelessness in this country, because we don't lack solutions. The Section 8 rental assistance program is a proven solution to ending homelessness and ending housing poverty. But the funding for it has not kept up with the need. And this program, along with a number of other programs within HUD's budget, face some pretty significant threats in the coming year. We knew even before the election that this was going to be a challenging budget year at the federal level. That's because in 2017, we're back under the very tight spending caps that were created under the Budget Control Act years ago. Since that time, Congress has twice given itself relief from those spending caps. And when they did, in negotiations, President Obama always insisted on parity. So in other words, any increase in defense spending had to be met with equal increases in non-defense spending. So President Trump has said he wants to do just the opposite. He wants to significantly increase defense spending, and he wants to pay for it with cuts to all non-defense spending programs. On the campaign trail, he talked about a penny plan, which said he wanted to cut 1% from all non-defense spending every year for the next 10 years. For HUD programs, when you think about the inflationary cost increases necessary just to keep roofs over people's heads, when you lose that and you cut deeper by 1%, you're looking at cuts as deep as 30% by 2026. And in the last couple of weeks, we learned that he plans to cut much deeper than that. So a couple weeks ago, he started talking about, and his White House started talking about, a $54 billion increase to defense spending. And just this week, we saw what that means for HUD programs. There was a leaked budget out of HUD that shows cuts of $6 billion this year, 14% cut to HUD in 2017 proposed. That $6 billion, by the way, doesn't include the inflationary cost increases, so it's more like a cut of close to $9 billion. So when you consider HUD's budget, where 85% of it pays for those roofs over people's heads, how do you cut $9 billion from that budget? Well, you start with the major block grant programs, like the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and SHOP and Choice Neighborhoods. And sure enough, in the proposed budget, they are eliminated. And then the cuts go deeper. There are proposed cuts of over $1 billion to public housing capital when we face a backlog of close to $40 billion of public housing capital needs across the country. There are cuts of more than $1.5 billion proposed to the Section 8 voucher program, which means up to 200,000 families who have vouchers today potentially losing them. So a few things to remember about this severe cuts that are proposed. They are a proposal, and at least this initial one was the leaked draft. We'll see next week the details in the official draft, in the official budget that comes out from the White House. But there's a saying in Washington, D.C. that's been around for a long time, that is, the president proposes and Congress disposes. So it is a suggested budget. And I would say that with an overreach like this, of these kind of cuts across all the social safety net programs, it's being met with a very cool reception on Capitol Hill. And there are bipartisan reactions saying this is a non-starter. But still, we are under these tight budget caps, and so we have to be very vigilant and active in opposing any cuts to these critical programs. We released a report last week together with leaders from over 80 national housing and community development organizations that makes the case for affordable housing programs through HUD and USDA's budgets. It shows the investments into each state and the jobs created and the benefits for families and for their communities. In California, there's close to $700 million of investment through HUD's budget, and it's created over 70,000 jobs throughout the state. So these are the arguments we'll have to make to protect these programs moving forward. The National Housing Trust Fund is another solution to the affordable housing crisis for the lowest income people. Many of you know the program well. It was created in 2008. Last year received its first funding allocation of $176 million. The next allocation will be coming soon. We're estimating it's about $220 million. This is nationally, of course. So it's an important step forward. It's the first new federal resources for homes for the lowest income people, but the amount spent on it is a drop in the bucket compared to the need. And this program, too, faces some significant threats through appropriations, through Fannie and Freddie continuing to be in receivership, through conservative Republicans who may seek, as they have in the past, to eliminate it altogether. So we have our work cut out for us protecting that program as well. But it's important to remember that, we don't lack an understanding of the problem. We don't lack solutions. We lack the political will to fund the solutions at the scale necessary to solve the problem. Because it turns out we don't lack the resources either. And certainly we don't lack the resources within the entire federal government, but even within our federal housing policy, we don't lack resources. Right? We spend about $200 billion a year to help Americans buy and rent their homes. And a full 3/4 of that goes to subsidize higher income homeowners, most of whom would be stably housed without the government's help. So there's 1/4 of those resources left to assist the lowest income renters, those with the clearest and the greatest needs. In fact, we spend more each year to subsidize the homes of 7 million of the highest income homeowners than we do to assist 55 million of the lowest income renters combined. So through our United for Homes campaign, we have worked for years to change this, to reform the mortgage interest deduction and retain the savings, reinvest it in affordable housing solutions for the lowest income people. You're leading the way on this in California. You have your own campaign to reform the mortgage interest deduction, keep the savings, put it into the low-income housing tax credit. I understand this week you had a big success getting that bill out of committee, which is terrific. We have to do this, and our work at the federal level and your work here in California complements each other. We have so much to do together here, right? In these efforts, we face the same powerful opponents, and we benefit from the same powerful research that makes the case for just how ineffective, inefficient, and such a poor use of limited federal and state resources the mortgage interest deduction is. And to the extent that you have success at the state level, it helps build the momentum for change at the national level. And as much as we can help shift the conversation at the national level, it can help you succeed at the state level. So our solutions with the United for Homes campaign at the national level are pretty simple. One, to reduce the amount of a mortgage eligible for a tax benefit from $1 million down to $500,000. This impacts fewer than 6% of mortgage holders across the country, and it saves $85 billion over 10 years. Now, granted, it's more than 6% in California, that's for sure. California is one of the states that would be impacted most by this change, but you also need to keep in mind that even those homeowners with mortgages above $500,000, they still deduct their interest up to the $500,000. The other change is to turn the mortgage interest deduction into a credit. This change creates a new tax benefit for 15 million low-income homeowners who currently get no tax benefit from having a mortgage, and it creates a deeper tax cut for another 10 million low-income homeowners. So 25 million low and middle-income homeowners get a tax cut, and we save $240 billion over 10 years to be reinvested in affordable housing solutions for the lowest income people. Now, for years, the mortgage interest deduction was considered that third rail, untouchable program, right? It's not the case anymore. As we're all seeing, the conversation has shifted. And now, at the national level, it's all happening, right? Tax reform is a top priority in Congress and with the administration, and the mortgage interest deduction and reforms to it are on the table. And you'll hear from those same powerful opponents that that's not the case, that the mortgage interest deduction won't be changed in tax reform. I can assure you, because I've talked directly with them, there are Republicans in the White House, key Republicans in the White House, in the House, in the Senate, on tax writing committees, and in leadership that are actively considering changes to the mortgage interest deduction. And this is our opportunity. This is our moment to keep some of those savings in affordable housing, because the other truth is, to the extent that those key leaders are looking at changes to the mortgage interest deduction, it's not because they want to invest more in affordable housing solutions, right? It's to lower corporate tax rates. So this, in many ways, to me, opens up the opportunity even more, because we can get beyond the battle over whether or not we should reform the mortgage interest deduction, and all the groups and all the stakeholders who haven't wanted to engage in that can now all agree that housing dollars should not go to corporations. They have to stay within housing and be targeted towards those with the greatest needs. So I hope you'll join us in our efforts at the national level. So I think we just have to make sure that we don't fall into what I think in some ways is a habit of getting back into kind of a defensive crouch, right, in this kind of an environment, and feeling like we need to just spend all of our time and effort defending. We have to defend, right, but we can't spend the next 4 years just defending programs when the need is so great. And I think we can benefit from all of the work that we've done and the research that clearly makes the case that affordable housing is more than just the right thing to do, although it's certainly that, right? We know that the benefits are tremendous to individual families and their communities when they are affordably housed. But affordable housing equally benefits our country's economy and its future. So studies have shown that when people are affordably housed, their healthcare costs fell by 12%, proving definitively that affordable housing lowers costs to the healthcare system. And that's not all, right? It increases kids' educational attainment. It increases their health outcomes. It acts, as Dr. Megan Sandel, a pediatrician out of Boston with Children's Health Watch, says, as a vaccine, protecting kids against a variety of societal ills. When we're affordably housed, we have more to save for our futures. Harvard has shown that we have 5 times as much to spend on healthcare, 3 times as much to spend on healthy food. We have twice as much to save for retirement. And when seniors are affordably housed, they can age in place, increasing mobility, independence, quality of life, and further driving down costs to the healthcare system. So despite the very real challenges that we face today and in the future, I feel hopeful that we can advance solutions for affordable housing. And my optimism is grounded in the work and the success that many of us, and many of you here in this room and in California, have been leading the way to do to expand our coalitions beyond the housing field, to engage environmentalists and the healthcare sector and the education sector and the anti-poverty sector, to bring them to the table to work towards solutions for affordable housing. You're already doing this. Nationally, we're starting to catch up with you. So Dr. Megan Sandel, who I mentioned earlier, she's been a tremendous leader in bringing doctors and other healthcare professionals to the work of advocating for affordable homes. The American Academy of Pediatrics recently came out with a report making the case that housing is healthcare, and they called for a major expansion of the Section 8 voucher program. And teachers are getting involved in too. Some major teachers' unions who send tens of thousands of teachers to DC each year to talk about schools are now adding affordable housing to the top of their priority list. That's because they've seen enough kids churning in and out of their classrooms to recognize the challenges that creates for the families and for the entire classroom. So they're joining the table. Matt Desmond's work, Evicted, has changed the conversation and got people to understand the central role that housing plays in causing and in alleviating poverty. So we have this broad and powerful coalition that is coalescing around the housing needs of the lowest income people, because we understand that if we care about poverty, economic mobility, inequality, if we care about education, healthcare, transportation, nutrition, if we care about local jobs and local economies, then the solutions start with home. So we certainly have our work cut out for us. We need, in this environment, to redouble our efforts, because the threats to existing programs are real and significant, and so are the opportunities. This work has never been easy, right? The work of increasing resources for the lowest income people, for seniors, for veterans, for people with disabilities, it's always required a long and sustained struggle. But our commitment, the commitment of over 1,000 people here in this room, is unwavering, right? To end homelessness and housing poverty, and knowing that there are hundreds of thousands more of us around the country dedicated to the same makes me confident that we will prevail in the end. So thank you for your work. Thank you for your partnership, for your commitment, and for your advocacy now and in the coming years. It's more needed than ever. Thank you.